Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War, which hosts Bang and Dang, fresh off of the Battle of Gettysburg last week. We ain't done with Gettysburg because we had a couple of short little skirmishes slash battles, whatever you want to call them, of the aftermath of Gettysburg happening right meow. First up, Battle of Hunterstown. We got the Battle of Fairfield, the Battle of Tebbs Bend, and the Battle of Helena, which all of these are very, very short battles, except for Helena is a pretty decent one. Other than that, we are now making our way downtown, towards our next big battle of this war, which is the Battle of Chickamauga, coming up in September. Other than that, really nothing going on in 1863 or really 1864, to be honest with you. Spotsylvania Courthouse, I guess. Cold Harbor might be one. Petersburg. Nothing really huge. I think all the huge battles are behind us now, huh? So we got Franklin, I guess. It's probably a decent one. Nashville might be a decent one. And then the Appomattox Courthouse, which we all know what happens there. Other than that, yep, we got a year and a half to go. Actually, well, almost still a year and a half in terms before this war is over. Starting today, though, we are dealing with the fallout of Gettysburg. And we'll start that with the Battle of Hunterstown, which took place July 2nd during the Battle of Gettysburg. This is when Jeb Stuart is still roaming around trying to do some things here. It's a skirmish at Beaver Dam Creek near Hunterstown, Pennsylvania, July 2nd, 1863. At dawn on July 2nd, the Army of the Potomac deployed near Gettysburg. They had cavalry posted elsewhere to protect the flanks and to look for Confederate activity, particularly from Major Jeb Stuart's cavalry. Stuart arrived at Robert E. Lee's headquarters between noon and 1 p.m., and about an hour later, Brigadier General Wade Hampton's exhausted brigade arrived as well. Stuart ordered Hampton to take a position to cover the left rear of the Confederate battle lines. Hampton moved into position astride the Hunterstown Road for 4 miles northeast of Gettysburg, blocking access for any Union forces that might try to swing around behind Lee's lines. I think we touched on this. Yeah, we touched on this a little bit in the Gettysburg episode, but not into depth like now.
Right. 2 brigades of Union cavalry from Brigadier General Judson Kilpatrick's division under Brigadier Generals George Custer and Elon Farnsworth. They were probing for the end of the Confederate left flank later the afternoon of the 2nd of July. Custer's men collided with Hampton on the road between Hunterstown and Gettysburg as they led a charge of Company A, 6th Michigan Cavalry, against the Confederate rear guard. Custer fell under his wounded horse and was saved by his orderly, Norvell F. Churchill. Hampton wanted to escalate the action, positioning most of his brigade along a ridge in readiness to charge Custer's position. At that stage, Farnsworth arrived with his brigade.
All right, well, Hampton did not press his attack, and an artillery duel ensued until dark when Hampton withdrew towards Gettysburg. The battlefield, colloquially known as the North Cavalry Field, which is northeast of the Gettysburg battlefield, is privately owned and includes a power plant. Nice. Right. The village of Hunterstown has a small plaque commemorating the nearby engagement on July 2nd, 2008. A marble monument honoring Custer was unveiled and dedicated. Good for him.
Good for him. So no casualties or anything in that one, I guess?
I guess not.
Well, moving on to the Battle of Fairfield. It was a cavalry engagement. It was during the Gettysburg campaign. Happened on the 3rd of July in 1863 near Fairfield, Pennsylvania, concurrently with the Battle of Gettysburg, although it was not a formal part of this battle. Fairfield had been the site of combat on the 21st of June when the 14th Virginia Cavalry of Brigadier General Albert Jenkins' Mounted Infantry Brigade had used Monterey Pass to conduct a raid near Fairfield. Following an engagement with the 1st Troop Philadelphia City Cavalry, the Confederates withdrew into the Cumberland Valley. I think we did that, didn't we? Monterey Pass, I remember that.
Well, maybe. Much of that cavalry of the Army of Northern Virginia had accompanied Major General Jeb Stuart on his ride around the Union Army of the Potomac through Maryland and south central Pennsylvania. Lee had retained several brigades to guard the mountain passes as he advanced through the Shenandoah and Cumberland valleys and to scout federal positions. Among the latter brigades was that of Brigadier General William E. Grumble Jones, who was the celebrated Laurel Brigade that had once been commanded by Turner Ashby. Okay. Jones had detached one of his best commands, which is the 35th Battalion of Virginia Cavalry, to accompany the infantry of Jubal Early, but retained the bulk of his command. Jones's brigade had been raiding the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in West Virginia and Maryland before being recalled by Lee.
Okay, gotta get those railroads. They hastened to Pennsylvania, crossing the Potomac River on the 1st of July, where Jones detached the 12th Virginia Cavalry to guard the ford. And then they camped at Chambersburg the following night. Jones's force had been reduced to the 6th, 7th, and 11th Virginia Cavalry and Preston's Chew's battery of horse artillery. Horse artillery, huh? Wonder what that is.
Probably horses pulling guns.
Jones reached Fairfield on the 3rd of July in response to Lee's orders to secure the vital Hagerstown Road. Reports of a slow-moving Confederate wagon train in the vicinity had attracted the attention of newly commissioned Union Brigadier General Wesley Merritt, who ordered the 6th U.S. Cavalry under Major Samuel Starr.
I wonder if that is Saul Starr's descendant.
Possible. Hey, he said, hey, yo, Major Starr, go scout Fairfield and locate those wagons for me, bud. He said, I will get on it. Once in Fairfield, Major Starr learned that a wagon train had just rolled out of town and was heading to Cashtown.
Hey.
He divided his 400 men into 3 detachments and began the search for the wagons.
One party soon encountered the pickets of Jones's 7th Virginia Cavalry and withdrew when additional Confederates rode up. They're like, oh, shit. Informed of the presence of the enemy, Starr rode to a small ridge and dismounted his men in fields and an orchard on both sides of the road.
Oh, shit.
He threw back a mounted charge of the 7th Virginia just as Chew's battery unlimbered and opened fire on the Federal cavalrymen. Supported by the 6th Virginia and the 7th Virginia, supported by the 6th Virginia, the 7th Virginia charged again, clearing Starr's force off the ridge and inflicting heavy losses.
Oh, Starr, what are you doing, bud?
Jones pursued the retreating Federals for 3 miles to the Fairfield Gap, but was unable to catch his quarry.
How not?
Right.
Federal losses were 6 moited, 28 wounded, 208 unaccounted for, which were mostly prisoners.
Yeah, whatever. They probably left them anyways. Like,
Right.
Screw you, Confederates.
The losses for the Confederates were 8 killed, 21 wounded, and 5 missing. Jones camped near Fairfield and kept the road open for Lee's retreat, then guided the rear of the Army of Northern Virginia, slogged through the Fairfield Gap in a driving rainstorm on the 5th of July.
After they're already retreating.
After they're already hanging their heads low. Private George Platt, an Irish immigrant, serving in Troop H of the 6th U.S. Cavalry. He was awarded the Medal of Honor on the 12th of July in 1895 for his actions at Fairfield. His citation reads, seized the regimental flag upon the death of the standard bearer in a hand-to-hand fight and prevented it from falling to the hands of the enemy.
Good for him, huh?
Hey,
He
man,
said,
the
"You ain't
flag-
taking my flag."
The flag was a major thing.
Yeah. His commander was Lieutenant Lewis H. Carpenter, who was awarded the Medal of Honor in the Indian Wars. After fighting ended, many wounded soldiers were cared for in the town of Fairfield. Major Samuel Starr was taken to the widow Sarah Amanda Blythe's house, which is likely where his arm was amputated. Ooh. Other accounts mention that the Rufus C. Swope house, which was across the Fairfield Inn, and St. John's Lutheran Church were also used as hospitals. It is probable that other buildings in town were used for this purpose as well.
Wherever anybody landed, that's where they were used. I wonder if old Starr got it with the widow. That's usually how it happened back in the day. Some man rose in town needing his arm chopped off.
The widow, Sarah Blythe, huh? Doesn't say if he was married at all.
He had a daughter, though. Battle of Tebbs Bend or Green River. We'll call it the Battle of Tebbs Bend. It was fought on.
It's got an apostrophe after the S, so is it Tebbs Bend?
Yeah, Tebbs Bend. The guy's last name must have been Tebbs. The Battle of Tebbs Bend was fought on the 4th of July in 1863 near the Green River in Taylor County, Kentucky, during Morgan's raid in the American Civil War. Obviously, Civil War. Brigadier General Morgan and his 2,460 hand-picked Confederate cavalrymen, they rode west from Sparta in the middle of Tennessee on June 11th, 1863, intending to divert the attention of the Union Army of Ohio from Southern forces in the state. Morgan moved northward on the 23rd of June, bound for Kentucky. On the night of the 2nd of July, he crossed the rain-swollen Cumberland River and advanced into Kentucky, proceeding as far as Cane Valley. Then he camped between Campbellsville and Columbia.
Right. The next day, he planned to cross the Green River at Tebbs Bend, which was guarded by 5 companies of about 200 men of the 25th Michigan Infantry, led by Colonel Orlando Hurley Moore. who apparently lived from 1827 to 1890. Good for him. Moore had erected earthworks in the woods near the river crossing. Moore had erected earthworks in the woods near the river crossing, guarded by a line of abatis of felled trees and several forward rifle pits. His goal was to protect the Lebanon, Campbellsville, Columbia Turnpike, which was a vital supply line and the easiest route for Morgan to take to reach Louisville.
Obviously. Well, Morgan divided his forces, sending the bulk of his cavalry to flank the small garrison and cut off their avenue of retreat. Sunrise on the 4th of July, Union pickets opened fire on approaching enemy cavalrymen. Soon, Morgan's artillery answered, wounding 2 Union soldiers in the rifle pits. Around 7 a.m., Morgan called a ceasefire and sent forward 3 officers under a flag of truce, demanding that Moore surrender, wishing to avoid further bloodshed. However, the Union commander refused, and firing resumed. Sharpshooters soon silenced Morgan's artillery battery of 4 guns.
See, why would he retire when he was just going to do that?
All right.
Morgan sent forward 2 dismounted regiments under Colonel Adam Johnson, which was about 400 troopers, that easily overran the advanced rifle pits.
Nice.
However, the attack stalled under heavy fire from Federals concealed behind the abatis.
Didn't count for that, did you there, Morgan?
Morgan then sent in the 5th Kentucky Cavalry from Colonel Basil W. Duke's brigade to support Johnson. Over a 3-hour period, Morgan pushed forward a total of 8 separate attacks, with each one being repulsed, including the flanking column. Finally, acknowledging that he could not seize the fortifications, Morgan sent another delegation under a flag of truce to Colonel Moore to request permission to collect his wounded and bury his dead.
Right. Well, hey, man. Good. They shook hands. Good game.
You called my bluff there.
All right. Well, with that task completed, Morgan withdrew southward along the bluffs on the Green River, finally crossing the bend at Johnson's Ford, heading back towards Campbellsville. Morgan lost 35 men killed, 45 wounded, while Moore counted with 6 killed and 23 wounded.
Jeez.
Of significance, among Morgan's casualties were 24 experienced officers. Ooh, that sucks. Who are a particular target of the Michigan sharpshooters. A Confederate monument which says, "They have not been forgotten by their countrymen." This was erected at the Tebbs Bend battlefield in 1872. Moving on to 1997, the site is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The battlefield itself was listed in 1999.
All right. June 8, 2013, some 200 persons attended a reenactment of the Battle of Tebbs Bend to observe the 150th anniversary of the fighting. A new marker dedicated to Confederate Army Private Frank Voss of Maryland was unveiled, with some of the descendants present for the occasion. I wonder if that's still there. The ceremony was planned by historian Betty Jane Gorn Smith and other members of the Tebbs Bend Battlefield Association, including its president, Cheryl Tillery. Dang, a bunch of chicks running this, huh? We are here to remember those men who gave the full measure of devotion for causes in which they sincerely believed. And then she's like, white power.
Either way, which they say, they both sides did. That's what both of them were all praying to their God. And they both generals were saying, God's on our side.
Right.
Crazy stuff. General Morgan, he asked for a truce so that the Confederates could bring in the injured and dead who were interred in the mass grave. It is said that the blood ran down through the yard into the Turnpike Road, Gorn Smith recalled. Only the Confederate cemetery remains at Tebbs Bend. The bodies of Union soldiers were buried near the Green River Stockade and later removed to the Lebanon National Cemetery in Lebanon, Kentucky. Gorn Smith read a roll call of the dead buried in the cemetery and acknowledged the unknown soldiers who perished there as well. According to century-old newspaper clippings, on the 3rd of July, 1911, some 4,000 attended a 48th anniversary remembrance of the battle. This particular gathering was reportedly the largest in the history of a Green River Valley. Oh, look at that. Look at the Green River Valley.
Only 200 people went in 2013?
Crazy.
Jeez. Which brings us to the last battle of the day, which is the lengthiest one of this episode, which is the Battle of Helena, which was fought July 4th, 1863, near Helena, Arkansas. Fighting occurred to the north in Missouri during 1861, but in early March of 1862, Confederate forces were defeated in northern Arkansas at the Battle of Pea Ridge, which coincidentally we just uploaded to our YouTube channel.
Oh, wow.
Which we did in last year about this time. Beginning in late April, Union forces followed up on the victory at Pea Ridge by moving into Arkansas, threatening the state capital of Little Rock, and occupying the Mississippi River town of Helena on July 12th, which I'm pretty sure we did that as well. Early 1863, holding Helena provided the Union with significant advantages, such as serving as a supply depot for the ongoing Vicksburg campaign, providing a marshalling point for a future advance against Little Rock, and securing northeastern Arkansas.
Damn right. Late May, with Union troops heavily pressuring Vicksburg, Confederate authorities sent a message to General Joseph Johnston, suggesting that the forces from the Trans-Mississippi Department were to be used to relieve the pressure on Vicksburg. One idea was an attack on Helena. The commander of the Confederate forces in the Trans-Mississippi, Lieutenant General Edmund Kirby Smith, was forwarded in June the dispatch that Johnston had received. And he delegated making the decision whether to attack Helena to Lieutenant General Theophilus Holmes, the Confederate commander of the District of Arkansas.
June 9th, Holmes learned that the strength of the Union forces in Helena was about 3,000 to 4,000 men and decided against an attack. He thought the attack would be too costly and instead suggested placing an artillery battery along the Mississippi River to intercept Union shipping.
Should have went for it.
Right. Further vacillation by Holmes ended when Confederate cavalry reported on June 14th that the garrison at Helena had been weakened. He began moving towards the Jackson Port and met Major General Sterling Price and Brigadier General John Marmaduke on June 18th. I haven't heard from these guys in a while.
Right. Well, there they formed a plan to concentrate Confederate forces against Helena, although Holmes was still nervous about the proposed attack, as he was worried that it might fail. He made an agreement with Price, who was much more popular with the general public, that he would publicly support the decision of the attack in the case of a failure. Oh, look at that. Once formed, the plan called for Price, with his 3,095 infantry, to move from Jacksonport to Cotton Plant on the 22nd of June, along with Marmaduke's 1,750 cavalry. That 1,339 infantry, commanded by Brigadier General James Fagan, would move from Little Rock to Clarendon. And Brigadier General Lucius Walker would screen Helena with his 1,462 cavalry. Look at these guys in his cavalry, man.
Right. Well, Holmes would accompany the attack, and on June 22nd, he revised the plan, ordering Price to concentrate at a location known as Switzer's instead of Cotton Plant. Rains and high stream levels slowed Price's approach, and though Marmaduke's men reached Switzer's on time, the infantry was delayed at the crossing of the Cache River. Moving through swamps resulted in the loss of many accompanying animals and wagons, and Holmes and Fagan reached Clarendon on June of the 26th.
Once they got there, Holmes provided further orders for advance. Walker was to screen Fagan's movement to Helena with part of his command, while Price continued on to Helena from Switzer's. Price's advance continued to be slowed by the terrain and weather, to the annoyance of Holmes, who rightly believed that the delay had prevented any remaining chance of the movement being a surprise.
Right.
It's true. The Confederate columns finally united on the 3rd of July, and on that very day, it began the final movement towards Helena. Overall, the Confederates had 7,646 men ready to attack.
Okay, well, meanwhile, the Union troops in Helena were commanded by Major General Benjamin Prentiss and consisted of the 13th Division of the 13th Corps. Although Prentiss was in command of the general district around Helena, the garrison itself was operationally commanded by Brigadier General Frederick Salomon, who was the commander of the division. Salomon would make many of the decisions in the upcoming battle. Prentiss originally dismissed rumors of a Confederate attack, but by late June gave more credence to the reports. He's like, yeah, because I see them now.
Yes.
A defensive position known as Fort Curtis already existed to the west of Helena, but 4 new batteries, named appropriately batteries A, B, C, and D, were ordered built.
Hey, look at that. Each of the 4 batteries was located on a high point of Crowley's Ridge. Trees were felled in front of the Union lines, although it is unclear if they were simply left where they fell as an obstruction or were converted. Who knows? Either or. Prentiss was originally intended to be reinforced by 3 vessels from the Union Navy, but only one came, the timber-clad USS Tyler, because there was only one available when the Confederate attack struck. Prentiss also canceled a planned celebration of the 4th of July as a precaution and ordered the roads into town barricaded with felled trees. You don't never cancel the 4th of July. Just do it. You going to tell me the Confederates are not going to celebrate the 4th of July either?
Well, no, because it's American independence.
So it's Confederates.
No, Confederates want to be a whole separate nation. Why would they celebrate the 4th of July? If anything, they'd have their own independence when this is all over.
Well, they're celebrating independence from Britain.
Maybe the Confederates didn't want it, since they wanted the Britons to help them anyways. The Union garrison would face the oncoming attack with 4,129 men. Yeah, remembering the surprise suffered by men under this command in the earlier Battle of Shiloh, Prentiss ordered bugles to be blown daily at 2 a.m. That one. Yeah. Prentiss's men had advantages over the Confederates through their defenses, batteries, and naval support, too. The Confederates had support from the local white populace, though. Good for them.
Did they? 3rd of July, Holmes, Price, Walker, Fagan, and Marmaduke, they gathered to formulate the plan of an assault. Holmes noted that the defenses of Helena were stronger than he expected, but carried on with the attack anyway.
Right, we just came all this way, we're doing it.
I mean, you do outnumber them.
Right.
Price was to attack the Union center, focusing on Battery C on Graveyard Hill. South of Price, Fagan was to attack Battery D on Hindman's Hill, while Marmaduke, supported by Walker, was to attack from the north to take Ryder's Hill and then use the hill as an artillery position to fire on batteries A and B.
All right.
Walker's specific orders were to act against the enemy as circumstances may justify. Don't ever tell anybody that.
Right.
A vague order that left him under his own initiative and resulted in him accomplishing little in the coming battle.
He's like,
oh, they don't need us.
The circumstances didn't justify me doing anything,
Right.
guys. Holmes made a pledge that he would take personally responsibility for the results if the assault failed. The convergent attack would be difficult, and the generals interpreted Holmes's order to begin the attack at daylight differently. How do you interpret that differently?
Right.
Historian Robert Kirby describes the Confederate plan as a model of brutal irresponsibility. Since Prentiss was aware of a coming attack, the Confederates would not have the advantage of surprise. Their plans were also hampered by poor reconnaissance.
Ah, jeez. What's going on here? Later on that very day of July 3rd, Fagan sent a patrol commanded by Colonel William H. Brooks to secure the junction of the two roads leading to Little Rock. To protect Fagan's flank, Brooks' men were sent up to the lower Little Rock Road at around 1:30 a.m. The detachment opened in the battle in the early dawn by clashing with Union pickets. Brooks' Confederates also encountered a camp of African-American refugees. Some of the refugees were moited, some were taken prisoner, and the camp was buoyed by the Confederates at some point during the attack.
The felled trees slowed Fagan's main attack, which was on the upper Little Rock Road, and forced the Confederates to leave their supply wagons and cannons behind. Either at 3:30 a.m. or shortly after 4 a.m., Fort Curtis fired a warning shot, alerting the Union defenders to the Confederate approach. 4:05 a.m., Fagan's skirmishers sighted the Union position, and with the day dawning, he attacked with 3 infantry regiments. Fagan's charge took the first line of Union defenses, but his men started taking fire from batteries C and D.
Uh-oh.
Minutes after Fagan's men became engaged, Marmaduke's men on the north end of the Confederate line entered the action as well, driving Union skirmishers back towards Battery A.
All right. Look at that shit. Confederates came under fire from the 29th Iowa Infantry, which had been sent to reinforce the position at Ryder's Hill, and became disorganized. The old Confederates did. Marmaduke paused his men who were fighting dismounted. He said, "Wait for artillery to be brought up, and for Walker's men to arrive in support." Meanwhile, on the lower Little Rock Road, Brooks ran into trouble, taking fire from Battery K, 1st Missouri Light Artillery Regiment, and also from Tyler. That's the boat, right?
USS Tyler.
Yes. The fire from the artillery battery did little damage, but the gunboat's shots were more effective. Brooks' men became disorganized and did not reform until 8 a.m.
Yeah. Price's attack had been delayed. Advancing his men through ravines and over hills, Price decided that his artillery would have to be left behind, although picked men from his batteries were to accompany the infantry to man the Union pieces that the attack expected to capture. Obstructions on the line of approach also disorganized Price's ranks. His advance was led by the 9th Missouri Sharpshooter Battalion, who sighted the Union positions on Graveyard Hill. Despite dawn beginning to be visible in the sky, Price misunderstood Holmes's order to attack at daylight and held back his troops until Holmes came over to explain his orders. Like, dude, you gotta go. You see this?
Do you know what daylight means?
You see the sun coming up?
Right. That means...
Well, that could mean different things. When the sun's starting to come up or when it's fully daylight.
when it starts to come up. Daylight would be...
Say dawn then. Dawn is when the start's coming up. Daylight is daylight.
Right. Yeah. See, man, these guys, morons. Holmes and Price. It's not the only time that we heard from this.
Right, especially Price.
Man. Meanwhile, Fagan's men attacked the 2nd Union line of works. The 43rd Indiana Infantry had been facing Fagan's Confederates and was reinforced by parts of the 33rd Iowa and the 35th Missouri under orders from Salomon. Because Price had not yet attacked, Fagan's men came under fire from both Battery D and C. Fagan's Confederates broke through the 2nd Union line, then a 3rd and 4th, but they then halted at about 7 a.m., their attack spent. They were now in front of Battery D. Dude,
They're like, oh, shit.
right, but if Price would have came in, they would have easily wiped them out.
Right. Well, Marmaduke had his own problems in his sector on the line. Joseph Bledsoe's Missouri Battery was brought up to provide artillery support, and 2 of its guns opened on the Union positions. Marmaduke followed up the bombardment with an attack against Battery A, but fog that had concealed the advance dissipated, and the attack was repulsed by the 29th Iowa, who mounted a counterattack. His dismounted cavalrymen were pushed back by the 29th Iowa and part of the 36th Iowa Infantry, and his flank was threatened by the 5th Kansas Cavalry and the 1st Indiana Cavalry, which were commanded by Powell Clayton.
And things is falling apart there for the old Confederates. The 2 Union cavalry regiments were holding a position behind a levee. Bledsoe's 2 guns were driven off, but neither side could defeat the other. Walker's men had encountered the felled trees across their path of advance. And though he threw forward a skirmish line, most of his men remained back at the barricades. Like, we ain't going out there, but you can skirmish all you want, but not me. Walker's men spent the rest of the morning primarily skirmishing with Clayton's cavalry and firing at long range, doing absolutely nothing. Without Clayton's men first being driven from behind the levee, Writer's Hill could not be taken. Good luck doing that.
Right. Around the time Fagan's men approached Battery D at 7 a.m., Price's attack finally began. Price's command consisted of the
At
brigades.
7 a.m.?
Right.
And this is in July. It's daylight at like 6 o'clock.
Right. Price's command consisted of the brigades of Brigadier Generals Dandridge McRae and Mosby Monroe Parsons, was led by the 9th Missouri Sharpshooter Battalion and a company of Arkansans local to the Helena area. Confusion was initially caused by the 2 brigades being separated by a ridge and unable to see each other. Each wasted time waiting for the other to advance.
The cannons in Battery C were manned by men from the 33rd Missouri, and they, along with portion of 33rd Iowa, poured a deadly fire into Parsons' men, while Battery B fired at McRae's brigade. The failure of the attacks on Batteries A and D allowed those positions to fire on Price's men, idiot.
Ooh.
And USS Tyler and Fort Curtis added artillery fire as well. And there's a fort nearby? Oh, jeez. Tyler had moved to a different location that allowed for better fire on Graveyard Hill after suppressing Brooks's men. Price's Missouri sharpshooters found positions from which they could pick off the gunners in Battery C, but could they?
Price's first attack was repulsed, as was a second. On the 3rd try, the Confederates managed to overrun Battery C, but the men from the 33rd Missouri had time to spike 1 cannon and take the supplies necessary for firing before the Confederates captured the guns. Well, no good to the Confederates then. Nope. Holmes and Price arrived on the hill and, finding that the Union guns could not be used, ordered Tilden's Missouri Battery and Marshall's Arkansas Battery to begin to come up. The advance up the hill had also thrown the Confederates into disarray. Carried by momentum, some of Price's infantry charged down the hill towards Helena itself, but were driven off.
Of course they were. Many men from the 7th Missouri were captured at this very time. A critical moment in the battle had arrived. If the Confederates could get enough artillery onto Graveyard Hill, they could shell the Union forces into submission. I don't think so, not with the old Tyler Iowa River. Prentice ordered the other 3 batteries to fire on Graveyard Hill, as well as USS Tyler, and 2 cannons in reserve, and 4 cannons from Battery K, 1st Missouri light artillery, and placed on lower Little Rock Road. He said, fire on them all.
Right.
Confident that he can hold off Walker with a single regiment, Solomon pulled the 1st Indiana Cavalry towards Fort Curtis, and a new line was formed in the vicinity using the Indiana cavalrymen and parts of the 33rd Iowa, 33rd Missouri, and the 35th Missouri.
All right, well, Fagan's men resumed the attack upon hearing the fighting on Graveyard Hill and drove the 43rd Indiana and part of the 33rd Iowa from the final Union line in front of Battery D, but were unable to take the battery itself, having been hit by crossfire while maneuvering through a ravine. Fagan's lines had been badly thinned by not only Union fire, but also heat and exhaustion. Both Price and Holmes were issuing orders independently, and Holmes's orders were making things worse for the Confederates. Holmes ordered the 8th Missouri Infantry to attack Fort Curtis, but upon seeing the regiment charge, the rest of Parsons' men joined in, believing a general attack was beginning. Oh, jeez.
Oh, wow. The Union guns concentrated on this attack, inflicted heavy casualties.
I bet they did.
The few who made it close to Fort Curtis were easily repulsed. Many Confederates surrendered. Holmes ordered Parsons. You piece of cunt. Holmes ordered Parsons to attack Battery D to support Fagan, but Parsons' men were too badly disorganized at that time. McRae was given the order to attack. So McRae sent out 200 men to attack the battery, but they were very unsuccessful. Believing a full-fledged attack to be suicide charge, McRae had his men simply fire on the rifle pits in hopes of diverting attention away from Fagan's command. Price then ordered Parsons to attack Battery D, but was informed that McRae had already been ordered to do that.
Jeez. With Price's men shredded, Fagan's men exhausted, and the cavalry not making any progress, Holmes decided to order a withdrawal at 10:30 a.m.
Wow.
Price's men fell back and abandoned Graveyard Hill. About 100 men remained behind on the hill, pinned down by a Union fire. The Union counterattack retook the hill and captured many prisoners, with over 350 prisoners taken on Graveyard Hill alone.
Wow.
Between 10:30 and 11 a.m., Fagan received orders to retreat from before Battery D. Part of the 37th Arkansas Infantry was trapped during the retreat and was captured. Including the men of the 37th Arkansas, about 250 Confederates surrendered in Fagan's sector.
Wow, what a failure this whole thing is. Man, who's overseeing these guys?
Price?
Besides Holmes.
I thought. Or no, it was the one guy. Walker, I think.
Oh, wow. The Union troops had taken advantage of the severe disorganization and scattering of the Confederate forces to take the prisoners. Either around the time the Battery C fell to Price's attack or as Fagan's withdrawal was ending, Brooks placed a 6-pounder field gun on a hilltop and began to fire on Union positions. Bam. Brooks is like, screw this shit.
Right.
But the Battery K and the 1st Missouri Light Artillery and USS Tyler, they drove them off. Marmaduke received orders to withdraw at about 11 a.m., but being angry at Walker over Walker's failure to support his attack, and, well, you didn't even tell. You're like, sometime when it's daylight tomorrow, just go ahead and fire. Whenever this, sometime. Sometimes between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Go ahead and fire. Marmaduke received orders to withdraw at about 11 a.m., but he was so angry at Walker over Walker's failure to support his attack, and believing that Walker faced only a small force, he decided against informing Walker of his retreat.
Wow.
I'm not going to tell him.
After Marmaduke's withdrawal, Union troops attempted to attack Walker's flank, but the Confederate cavalrymen withdrew from the field before they were caught.
Oh, wow.
Walker's withdrawal occurred about 2 p.m. Jeez, he was there forever. Historian Robert E. Shallope wrote that the Confederate attacks were repulsed perhaps less by the powerful Union entrenchments than by their own poorly coordinated attack.
Yeah, this has been a common theme from Confederates since day one.
Right.
It's just, and both sides, actually. It's just a terrible, terrible, terrible communication. And whenever you see fit, if you see fit to engage, go ahead. Or whenever you can see 100 yards ahead of you, you can start firing. Or I don't know what they're doing. It's some stupid stuff. Dumb. Whenever you see fit. If you see fit to engage. And the guy's like, I'd never seen fit.
Right. Didn't find it a good time to do it. Sorry.
No, it's good. Holmes lost 1,636 of his 7,646 men.
Jeez.
173 killed, 687 wounded, and 776 missing. Prentice claimed the capture of more than 1,100 men and stated that over 300 dead Confederates were buried by Union troops. Almost all of the Confederate losses were from the brigades of Fagan, Parsons, and McRae, who took 32% of their attacking forces as casualties.
Wow.
Walker lost only 12 men.
I bet he did.
Historian Mark Christ attributes this to the weakness of his attack. Yeah, because he didn't do shit.
He did nothing.
According to Chris, Prentice lost 220 of the 4,129 men he took into battle. 57 killed, 127 wounded, 36 missing. The historian Ed Bears reports the Union losses at 57 killed, 146 wounded, and 36 missing. Cool.
Right.
And historian Thomas Coutre provides the same figures as Bears.
All right, cool. Casualties were heaviest among the 33rd Iowa and the 33rd Missouri, while the 2nd Arkansas Infantry Regiment, which was African descent, saw the first combat wounds suffered by African-American soldiers in Arkansas during the war. The unit had not completed formation at the time of the battle and was poorly trained, so it had been positioned in an area where it was unlikely to be directly engaged. Holmes accused McRae of misbehavior before the enemy, and in his report placed part of the blame for the failure on McRae, but McRae was cleared by a subsequent court-martial. So dumb. The battle also destroyed any positive relationships remaining between Holmes and Price.
Obviously.
With the former believing that the latter should have reinforced Fagan. Both Holmes and Marmaduke accused Walker of dereliction of duty as well.
They all were to blame.
Right.
Most Confederate withdrew from the area the next morning, falling back to Jacksonport, although Walker's men remained behind to harass any Union troops that sallied from the city. We're going to sally. I'm just going to sally away from a while. Believing that the Confederates were preparing to attack again, Prentice requested reinforcements, which arrived from Memphis, Tennessee on the 6th of July.
Yep, pretty sure that put the brakes on anything they were going to do.
Vicksburg had surrendered on July 4th, and Confederate garrison at Port Hudson, Louisiana, fell within a week.
We'll see that.
News also reached the Union forces at Helena of a major Union victory at the Battle of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. With the fall of Vicksburg and Port Hudson, the Confederate forces in Trans-Mississippi were cut off from the rest of the Confederacy. Confederate infantry deserted in large numbers, their morale shattered. The Confederate repulse at Helena had reserved the Union bridgehead in eastern Arkansas and had parried any attempt to break Union control of Mississippi River.
Yep. Well, Helena was reinforced, and in mid-August, Union forces began a campaign against Little Rock with Helena as the staging ground. Price commanded the Confederate forces during the campaign as Holmes had fallen ill. Events during this campaign worsened the split between Marmaduke and Walker, and the former killed the latter. The former killed the latter in a duel on September 6th.
Whoa.
Wow, so Marmaduke smoked Walker, huh?
Yeah.
September 10th, Union troops took Little Rock, which we'll see. The Helena Confederate Cemetery includes burials of Confederate soldiers killed during the battle and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, as are the remains of the Union batteries. That's it for this, and stuff not going great for the Confederates at this time of year. July, man,
Getting their beat down.
just getting whooped, and don't know how to do anything. These guys are not prepared. They're not in sync with each other, and they all are just like, well, do whatever you want.
Right.
Do whatever you want. But next week, we have another Confederate mishap as the Jackson expedition to, I think the Union are trying to retake the city of Jackson, which takes place from July 5th to the 25th. In Mississippi, we'll have a whole episode on that because that's a big, long one. Then we'll have the Battle of Williamsport, the Battle of Boonesboro, the Battle of Cordon. I guess in Maryland and Indiana. There's a battle in Indiana. I don't think we've been in Indiana yet, but
Look at that. The Confederates will whip off 4 straight victories.
yeah, the Confederates do some things here, but doesn't last very long. Then we'll stay in Maryland for a little bit. And got a lot of South Carolina, North Dakotas. I'm assuming these are some Indian stuff happening, coming up down the line. So, yeah, big battles are over for pretty much the whole war besides the Chickamauga battle coming up in September. Other than that, it's just your regular old B's and C's and D's. And the Confederates are pretty much holding on by a thread here for the rest of the war. So we'll see you then for the Jackson expedition next week. But before we go, I want to let you know about our new show that's going to start. If you're listening to this on the day this releases, which is Friday, this show will start Monday, which replaces our This Week in Sports History show. It's called According to Wikipedia, what sounds exactly what it is. We go search Wikipedia for some random articles. Matter of fact, that's all we do is we randomize them. Whatever ones pop up, we read. So, could be about Swiss Army knives. Could be about how to bottle beer. You never know what it's going to be. So join us there. There's over 6 million English language Wikipedia articles, and we'll probably ain't going to read 6 million of them, but we'll read them so you don't have to. So with that, go check out Bang Dang Network. You'll see this show, as well as the According to Wikipedia, and go check out Outlaws and Gunslingers, where we're in the middle of the mafia covering the Genovese crime family at this moment. So go check that out on the Creative Control Network. We'll be back next week for the Battle of Jackson and the Jackson Expedition. We are the Michiganders.
Whoa.
with
Bang Dang.
Yeah.